Hello folks, welcome back to our channel. In this video we are going to talk about Argo CD. So Argo CD is a GitOps tool. We have talked about what is GitOps and what kind of problems does it solve in our previous video. If you haven't watched that video, please go and watch to understand how GitOps works. However, I quickly talk about the problem statement and what kind of problems Argo CD is going to solve. So first of all, if you see drawbacks of traditional deployment, first thing is manual kubectl command execution. So in case if you want to apply any files on the Kubernetes cluster, so you have manifest files over here. These manifest files you are going to apply it with the kubectl apply. But in case if you want to apply that file again and again, you need to execute it manually every time. That is one drawback. And if you want to do the same deployment in other environments on other clusters, of course you need to do the again manual deployment every time. Next thing, no audit trails. As you are executing this from your local system, there is no way to track that why you have made those changes and what kind of changes you made to existing environment. And also once it is applied, we can see that it is applied, but even it is quite difficult for us to understand who has applied those changes. Next thing, deployment drift. In few cases, we go and change Kubernetes objects directly by logging into our cluster. So if you modify something, for example, let's take that your manifest file have replicas of 3, but you changed it as a 5. Okay, still it is up and running, but if you see there is a configuration drift, I mean to say your deployments have replications as 3, but actual environment is running with replications as 5. So definitely there are deployment drifts. Next, multi-cluster complexity. So if you want to execute on one cluster, yeah, you are connected to that cluster and you are doing. But like this, if you have 2, 3, 4, 5, so applying or connecting to these clusters manually every time and apply those changes on specific clusters or managing these clusters is quite difficult over here. Next, slow rollbacks. Again, assume that you have deployed something on the cluster, but after some time it breaks something. To roll back, only it is possible because the manifest files are with you. At the same time, other people should know that what kind of changes it was made to these configuration files. I can say that rollbacks is possible, but some limitations are there. So these are the drawbacks which we have, and we can overcome those with help of Argo CD. So how do we overcome? First thing is, instead of applying our manifest files manually, we automate that process. I mean to say, we can sync that process like in the Git. Let's assume that we have manifest files over here. The moment you commit your manifest files over here, your Argo CD watches that and it applies or it syncs those configurations with the Kubernetes. So there is no way you manually execute kubectl commands. That headache has taken care by Argo CD. Next thing, provides audit trails via Git history. As you want to make any changes to this cluster, you are not manually changing it, you are changing only your manifest files. Every time you update your manifest files, the history has been tracked, so it's easy for auditing purpose and we can easily understand who made what changes. Next, detects and corrects drift automatically. Again, if you do some changes over here, Argo CD also watches the Kubernetes, and if this configuration is not matching with the Git configuration, so Git configuration is again applied on the cluster. So in previous case, like replicas are 3 over here and you manually went and modified it to 5, but immediately Argo CD watches and it applies this 3 again, I mean to say replaced this 3. So there won't be any drift. Next, simplifies multi-cluster management. As Argo CD can manage multiple clusters, okay, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay, any number of clusters you can add to Argo CD. So managing it over here is quite easy. It can understand on which cluster I wanted to do the deployment because you update in the manifest file. Next, enables fast rollbacks with Git revert. So again, if you want to do any changes or any rollbacks, you already have all the manifest files over here. We can just change back to the previous version. That's it. Argo CD again roll back the changes or sync those changes with the cluster. So these are the advantages of using Argo CD. Now we are going to see this practically. I'm going to set up one Kubernetes cluster, then install Argo CD, then we'll deploy some applications on that and we'll see how it takes care of that application. Okay. For that one, first thing is I'm going to set up EKS cluster, then I'm going to install Argo CD on top of that one. However, if you wanted to do this one, we should set up some prerequisites, which I have mentioned it over here. I believe these prerequisites might be there in your system already. If you don't have, yeah, you need to set it up these to use or to practice this lab. I have already set up all these things. I mean to say AWS CLI, EKS CTL to create EKS cluster, then kubectl, then IAM user, then configure AWS CLI. I mean to say we just need to provide access key ID and secret access key. So these things you need to do. However, if you don't know how to set up those, I have created a documentation over here that is revd/argo cd. Here prerequisites. In this file, I have updated all those dependencies. Before proceeding further, if you are a person who learn by doing, then we are conducting Argo CD weekend workshops. So in single weekend, you can learn complete Argo CD with the similar knowledge to implement CI/CD pipelines or deployments in your environment by using Argo CD. If you are interested, please reach out to our team. They will help you. All right. Now let's come back to our discussion. So here are list of the packages or softwares which we need to install. That is EKSCTL, kubectl, AWS CLI, IAM role creation, then AWS configure. So this is how we can install on Windows. I have given PowerShell scripts. Even you can use the same scripts to install EKSCTL and kubectl. Okay. So this is to install kubectl. Then once it is done, we need to install AWS CLI. Okay, this is the link. Similar way, I have given steps to how to install Linux. Above one is how we can install on Windows. So below are the steps how we can install on Linux. So this is EKSCTL, then kubectl and AWS CLI. I have already installed all this. Just quickly I will show you. That is EKSCTL version. So it is installed, then kubectl -- version, it is already installed, then AWS CLI, this is also installed, AWS -- version, so AWS also installed. So whatever prerequisites are there, I have already installed. Now it's time to create our EKS cluster. To create EKS cluster, we need to follow few steps. I have already mentioned those over here. So if you see setup EKS and Argo CD, this is the file. First thing is we need to create a cluster.yml file. So by using this single file, we can create the EKS cluster. However, you can create by using Terraform also, but I'm following this method just to create the cluster quickly. And if you have local cluster, I mean to say Minikube, you can use that also to set up Argo CD. That's not an issue. However, for better understanding, I'm using EKSCTL, but please remember that it is chargeable. It might cost around $1 if you complete this entire lab, because I have already tested it out and I got around $1 bill for this lab. But before creating this file, you need to remember few things. That is, I'm not creating any new VPC. I'm using existing VPC itself. So this is my AWS console where I am in the United States North Virginia region, nothing but US East 1 region. So US East 1 region. So same region I'm using over here. So US East 1 and Kubernetes version 1.32 I'm using. I think now I can use 1.33. That is the latest. But anyway, so 1.32 is working fine so far. But you need to make sure that you are updating this version based on when you are using this file. Then VPC, so we need to provide the VPC ID, existing VPC ID. If you want, you can create a new VPC, but the purpose of this lab is more focus on how Argo CD works. So I don't want to spend more time to set up the environment. So if you see 343, same thing. Oh, so here the VPC ID is different. Anyway, we are going to update it. And then subnets also we need to update. Okay, so first thing, let's create this file in our local system. So what I will do, I will create a directory called mkdir argo demo. Okay, so I'm creating a demo called argo demo inside the argo directory. So argo demo, I'm going inside. We don't have any files. I'm creating a cluster.yaml file, and I'm just going to copy this code. Okay, completely I'm copying. Then I will do the modification. So I created this file. Even I can open this file from here. I mean to say argo demo, right? So yeah, this is the one, and cluster.yml. Over here, yeah, region is same. VPC I should change. So let me go and grab the VPC what I have now. So this is the VPC ID, right? So copy this and update it over here. All right. Next thing is you need to choose the subnets. You can see here I'm using public subnet, two public subnets, and that is US East 1A, US East 1B. I can choose any of these subnets, but I need to update these subnets also. So let me grab subnets from here. So let me open this. Yeah, you can see here US East 1A. This is the subnet. Let me copy this subnet and copy it over here. Then US East 1B, because I have used name as a US East 1B. If it is US East 1C, of course I need to copy this one. Okay, let me change that. If you don't update it properly, your cluster creation might fail. Okay, so you should make sure that it is updated properly. So these two has been updated, and the next thing over here also you need to update it. And these are the minimum maximum desired. For now I am using a single system, that to T3 medium. That would be sufficient for this lab. Okay, but as I mentioned, it is chargeable, so please make sure you delete your cluster once it is created and tested it out. Okay, so my cluster configuration has been updated. So let me go and apply it. Clear the screen. So to apply it, I need to use the EKSCTL, not kubectl. Please remember, that's why we need to install EKSCTL. If you are using Terraform, of course you don't require EKSCTL. EKSCTL create cluster -f and cluster, the file name. So file name cluster.yml, right? So this is the file name. So you just need to apply it. And if you want to delete the cluster, you just need to mention delete over here. EKSCTL delete cluster -f cluster.yml. That's it. So to create cluster, it takes almost 15 minutes. I'm just going to pause this video and I will come back. However, quickly I want to show you how the cluster creation process happens. Backend, it is going to use CloudFormation. So let me open the CloudFormation. And also EKS, once it is created, we are going to check EKS service. At this moment, we don't have any clusters under North Virginia region, so it should be empty. Then once this cluster is created, we can see, and it should create a stack. You can see here EKSCTL Argo CD. And one more thing I forgot to mention, the cluster name we mentioned it as a Argo CD, so we can change this one. So what the things you need to change? Region and VPC ID, it should be your VPC ID, and subnets, what is the subnet you are using, respective subnet ID. Once you have updated, even over here also you need to mention. So any one of these subnets it is going to use to provision these instances. However, we are using only one instance. Okay, even instance type, if you wish to change, you can change it. All right, let's wait until it get created. Then we will come back and see what to do next. Hey folks, cluster creation has been completed successfully. I think it took almost 15 to 20 minutes. Okay, and you can see here Kubernetes command should work with this has stored our credentials over here. So if we try to execute this command, it should work. Okay. However, if it is not working, we need to set up the credentials. All right, now cluster is ready. Next step is we need to install Argo CD. For that also, we need to go through with the documentation. So over here, if you see, we have created the cluster. So EKS create cluster -f cluster.yml, and make sure you delete this cluster once you have done your practice. Okay. Next, cube create namespace. Now we need to install Argo CD, right? Argo CD needs one namespace, that is Argo CD. So we are going to use the same namespace. So let me create namespace. Once we have created namespace, you can see that kubectl get ns. These are the list of the namespaces which are available in this cluster. Let me clear the screen. And kubectl get all -n Argo CD. So far we haven't created any resources, so it should be empty at this moment. Okay, you can see here there are no resources. Now let's install Argo CD on this cluster. So to install, this is the command. So we are applying manifest files of Argo CD. It creates some resources on the cluster to run Argo CD application. Okay, it created multiple resources on our cluster. We can check those by using the command again, kubectl get all -n Argo CD. Okay, so these are the resources which are created in this namespace. You can see there are multiple pods, and we have services. So these are the services and deployments and replica sets. If you see the services, all these services are cluster IP. Okay, so you cannot access these from outside of our cluster. However, we wanted to access Argo CD, right? So in this, we need to access Argo CD by accessing this service, Argo CD server. But this is cluster IP. We need to change this to load balancer to access this cluster. However, we can also use the node port over here or port forwarding. We can choose any one of these, but for cost efficiency, we are going to use port forwarding, where we can access this with the local host URL. So now how we can do port forwarding? You can see that over here. So this is the command to port forward. However, I'm going to add commands to load balancer and node port. So for now, we are copying this. It is running on 443, but I want to run it on 8080 localhost. You can see here it is Argo CD service. Okay. So copy this and execute it. So kubectl port forward service Argo CD server, same thing over here, service Argo CD server -n Argo CD 8080. That is the port I want to access, and it is running on 443. You can see here. Okay, 443. All right. So now it is port forwarded. This session should be up and running to access our Argo CD. If this is get closed, you cannot access our Argo CD because we are accessing with the local host. So local host 8080 if you do. So it is not on 443. Yeah, of course. Proceed to localhost with unsafe. That's okay because it is our own service. Now we need to log into our Argo CD. But so far we don't have any username and password, right? So the default username for Argo CD is admin, and password you need to get it by running a command. So the password is stored in the secret. So this is the command kubectl get secret, and this is the secret, and it is on namespace, and we are just decoding it. Okay, so not here, because this session should up and running. I will open new session. So new window, and let me execute this command. It displays the password of Argo CD. We can use this password to log into our Argo CD. Sign in. Alright, so we have logged into our Argo CD. This is the Argo CD GUI. Even we can access Argo CD from the CLI as well. For that, we should install Argo CD CLI. But in the real world, mostly we use the GUI. We rarely use the CLI. That's why I'm going to manage my Argo CD from here itself. Let's quickly understand the GUI. Over here, if you see Argo CD, the version 1.3.5. And applications, nothing but which and all applications are managed by Argo CD. So far we haven't created any applications, so you cannot see anything. And in case if there is any applications are configured and you want to see, you just click on refresh so that it will be visible. Sync apps. So in case multiple apps you want to synchronize at a go, then you are going to use this option. First, we need to add the new app. This is the manual way of adding new app. Over here, we are going to give the application name, project name. These all are just common. Then you need to specify the sync policy. Then you can see here source repository, nothing but from which repository I need to get the manifest files, that you need to specify. And branches, so head, nothing but in the main branch where the head is mapping to that commit it is going to retrieve. But you can change the branches by deleting it, you can specify, but we didn't specify any URL over here, you cannot see it. And within the repository, I mean to say within this repository, your manifest files might be in some directories or subdirectories. We need to specify that path. Okay. Next thing is destination, nothing but cluster. So on which cluster we want to deploy these manifest files. So you can see here Kubernetes default SVC, nothing but the current cluster. If I select this one, whatever repository we are selecting on above, those will be deployed it over here. And namespace, on which namespace you wanted to create. So rest of the arguments we can choose based on the necessity, but this is the manual way of creating application. But we don't create applications manual way. This information we are going to pass through a file, so that file create this app. So that's how usually we create in the real time. So I'm not going to create application from here. I will create a application file, whatever configuration is required for this one. If you see what and all fields are required to create this application, project name is required, sync policy you can ignore for now, then source, nothing but repository name needed, and branch needed, then destination cluster needed. So these are the major components which are required to create a file. Okay. Before creating a file, first we need to create a repository and we need to commit our manifest files over there. For that, I'm going to create a new repository. Before proceeding with that, let me see if I missed any steps over here. Yeah, Kubernetes, this is done. Next thing is get initial password login. Yeah, we got it, and access the Argo CD. All right, this is done. And the next thing is one more step I missed it, that add cluster to Argo CD. So at this moment, okay, if I go to GUI applications, nothing is there. But if you go to settings, you can see here clusters, nothing but what and all clusters are managed by this Argo CD. Wherever this Argo CD is deployed, that cluster is managed by default. So Argo CD cluster, whatever we created, it is connecting with the Kubernetes default SVC. So we don't need to add it. However, if you want to add it, these are the steps. So this is the document which helps us to add cluster to Argo CD. Let's assume that if we have more than one cluster, by default Argo CD manages the cluster where it is installed. But if you have a cluster and you want to manage that through Argo CD, then you need to execute this command Argo CD cluster add and ARN number of that cluster. Anyway, about two commands, if you see, the first one is helpful for us to set the current context. Let's assume that you have three clusters. Now you want to create a pod in specific cluster. Whenever you want to execute kubectl, you need to make sure that you are executing on right cluster, right? This is the command just to validate to which cluster you have connected. Let's assume that you want to switch from one cluster to another cluster to execute the commands. This is the command to switch between your clusters. So this helps us to connect to different clusters, and this tells us that to which cluster you have connected at this moment. By the way, I'm planning to launch my Argo CD course on Udemy with some more important concepts. If you are interested, please check out my instructor page in next 2 to 3 weeks. You can see a course mastering Argo CD using GitLab Helm charts and customization. Thank you, and let's go back to our discussion. Okay, I think everything is good so far. Now it's time to create our application. So to create our application, as I mentioned, first we need to create a repository and we need to commit our manifest files. So what kind of manifest files we can commit? So just to make the work easier, I have created two manifest files. one deployment file and one service file and committed it over here. You just follow this one. I copied this from the Argo CD project itself because they use this guestbook UI application just to test the application. So even we are going to use the same, but before that we need to create a repository so that we can commit these manifest files over there. I have already a repository called guestbook. Over here, if I go to RAVD, so if I go to repositories, there is a repository called guestbook. I can use it, but just for better understanding, let me create a new one. Okay, so I will name it as a guestbook demo. So I'm just creating this repository, and let me clone this repository. PWD, I'm going to desktop Argo CD, git clone. I'm cloning this repository. Okay, so go inside to guestbook repository for a demo, guestbook demo repository. Now we don't have any files. What I'm going to do, first I will create a directory mkdir app, or else I can do it from here. Okay, just for better understanding. So this is the repository we are using, right? First let me create a file, new file, built-in, and I need to create this as a deployment file. Either I can write it, but I don't want to spend more time over here. So let me copy the existing file itself. So where is the repository? Go back here. So Argo CD is the documentation repository for us. Over here, if you see create application, so first thing is this deployment file here. Okay, copying this deployment, what does it do? It is going to create one replica and it requires the image. So we are going to get this image, Google samples and GB frontend. So let me copy it. So it is going to take this image and create the pod. Then it is going to expose on port number 80. And we are using target port, yeah, port number 80. Alright, so let me copy this one into my notepad and save this file, Ctrl S. I will save it as a in the Argo CD guestbook demo. I will name it as a guestbook UI deployment.yaml. Okay. Next, I am going to create one more file, new file, and I will copy other service code. So this is service. So let me copy this and save this file, Ctrl S, guestbook UI service.yaml. Okay, so we created both the files under guestbook demo, that is guestbook UI and guestbook service. So instead of over here, what I will do, I will create a directory over here, that is app directory. Under app directory, I'm going to move these two files. Okay. All right. Now, if I go and check my repository over here, git status. So there is a app directory, git add dot git status. I'm just committing these changes. Okay. There are two files. One is deployment file and another one is service file. Git commit -m added manifest files, git push. Alright, so we have committed our manifest files to guestbook demo. Okay. Now we have apps directory over here, two files are there. Now I want to manage this application or this repository through Argo CD. So how I can do the deployment? So if you ask me the manual way of deployment, of course I can do by using ls cd apps ls kubectl apply -f guestbook deployment.yml. Okay, so if I do this one, of course it get applied and pod gets created. So kubectl get pod. If I do, we can see that it is creating a pod. But this is manual way, right? If I want to change anything like replicas from 1 to 2, if I want to change, of course I need to execute this command again. So every time manually I should execute it. But I will show you how automatically we can do that one. That is where Argo CD comes into picture. Before that, kubectl delete pod, kubectl delete -f guestbook UI deployment.yml. So I'm just deleting the app which I just created because I wanted to manage it through Argo CD. Now it's time to manage this through Argo CD. So to manage this through Argo CD, as I mentioned, you can go here and create the new application. Okay, where it is? So applications, I can create it, or else I can write a application file for Argo CD. Now, how to write your first application file for Argo CD? So just to understand it, I'm going to open Notepad. So here let's write our Argo CD application file. As you know, manifest file starts with API version. So we need to choose right API version for Argo CD. For Argo CD, we should use argo proj.io/v1 alpha 1. Okay, so even you can check this one. So if you search for example Argo CD application file, it gives some application file. Over here you can see here API version Argo CD project io.application. So same thing I'm going to use. Okay, so this is the one. Next, kind we need to mention application. Okay, so application, even you can see here kind over here is application. Next, metadata we need to do metadata. So over here name guest book minus demo and namespace. So we need to tell namespace that on which namespace this application should create. So Argo CD namespace. All right, next specification. So in the specification we need to mention project. If you do remember, over here it looks for project, right? So we need to give these inputs now in the specification. So project, we have default. We can give any project name. Even you can check that in the Argo CD. Like if I go to settings, okay, settings, you can see here projects. So projects helps us to group the list of the resources. Let's assume that in a project you have 10 microservices. For all those 10 microservices, you can use the same project name. So I'm using the default project which is already there, or else you can create your own project and you can use that one. Okay, it doesn't create much difference. As we are testing it out, we can go with the default one. Next thing, again I will go to applications, add application. After project, what we need to specify? Source of the repository. We have already committed our manifest files over here, right? This is the source of the repository. So that you need to specify. So source, and we need to give the repo URL. Okay, repo URL. Clone this. So after this, we need to tell the target revision. Okay. So target revision, you have seen, right? Head. You can see here. Yeah. So target revision head. Usually we use head, but we can change this value as well. Next thing, path. Path nothing but within this repository where exactly our manifest files available. So it is available under app directory, right? So here we have apps. Over there our manifest files are there. So we need to specify apps. This is the source. Next thing is destination. So destination nothing but these manifest files on which cluster I should apply. That is what the destination means. So we need to tell server. Here in case of external cluster name, we need to specify it. However, we are using our internal one, right? HTTP. So if I go again, Argo CD settings, OK, cluster name. So this is the cluster. Okay, let me copy it. Same name we are using. So I wanted to deploy these manifest files on the local cluster. Next thing, in this cluster, on which namespace you want to create. If you don't specify, it is going to install on default namespace, but I don't want to install it on the default namespace. That's why I'm using guest book namespace. Okay, this is the namespace. All right. So this is how we can create our application manifest file. The major components over here is what kind of application, API version, and in the specification, we need to specify project name, source, nothing but from where we need to fetch manifest files, destination, on which cluster and which namespace we want to deploy these manifest files. So let me copy this onto file over here, just create a new file. Okay, once it is applied, we can able to see the application is managed through Argo CD. So this configuration will be used to create the application. So let me save this file. I'm going to create it outside of this app directory and name it as a application.yml. Okay, so now let's try to apply it. To apply it, target revision, I think everything, this should come here. This should come here. Yeah, this is fine now. Now let me try to apply it. Sorry. kubectl apply -f application.yml. So we are creating our first application on Argo CD. Let me go back to applications. So far we don't have any applications. Refresh app. No apps selected. But anyway, so I'm going here and applying it. Once it is applied, we could able to see the new one. Okay, there are some typos in the code. Let me see. Sorry, this is the one. Namespace should be over here. Okay, so this is the typo. Okay, I just corrected it. And let me execute it once again. Okay, it has been created, that application. Let me go and check it out. And let me refresh it. Yeah, you can see here the app has been created. However, if you see, status is showing missing and also out of sync. Why it is showing like that? That is where sync policies comes into the picture. If you do remember, when we are creating new policy, you just see here, it is, yeah, sync policy. You just see here sync policy manual and automatic is there. So by default the sync policy is manual, nothing but it just create the application, but these changes cannot be applied to the cluster until we manually sync it. There is a option, right? So until we click on this one, it won't get applied. And if I open this application, you can clearly see in the details. Okay, so let's open this application and let's understand about the further more details. So if you see, there are multiple options over here. At this moment, this is the guestbook application. Through application it's created, and it has two resources, that is guestbook UI service. This is deploy. So it has to create two, but at this moment it is not created yet. If I go and check it in the kubectl get ns, so namespaces, actually we wanted to create it under guestbook namespace, right? So there is no guestbook namespace at all, so which means that it is not yet created. And details, if you see the details, this is details of our application. You can see here project name we mentioned default, then cluster name in cluster, nothing but the current cluster, namespace we mentioned this, and creation date, repo URL, this is the repository, head, apps. So all the information which we mentioned in the application.yml file, it takes all this information and created this app. And if I scroll down further, you can see here sync policy enable auto sync. So it is saying that I'm going to enable auto sync if I click this, because it is not auto sync at this moment. At this moment it is manual sync. So manual sync nothing but I need to click on the sync option. Next thing we wanted to know is parameters, nothing but what and all parameters it requires. Next, this is manifest file of our application file. So you can see here, whatever we mention in the application file, same manifest file you can see. These are the steps which we mention under the specs section in the file, right? Next, differences. Differences nothing but left side, what is there at this moment in the cluster. At this moment in the cluster, there is no resources, right? That's why you cannot see this. So the green color, which means that, okay, these changes yet to apply in the cluster. And events, so what and all things are happening for this application. That is where events comes into picture. All right, let me close it. That is about the details. Even if I click on the div, it goes to the again same file. So we need to apply that. So the sync option you can see here, this is the sync. When you use manual option, you need to come here and click on sync. So mostly in the real world, we don't enable automation because it is easy to come here and just click on sync, right? Okay, so we will just see the differences. If differences are okay, we will come and sync. Especially in the production, we don't deploy automatic way. Maybe in the non-prod environments like QA, dev, staging, on those environments, we enable automate. However, in my project, most of the services, it is manual sync. Next, sync status, we haven't synced yet on the cluster, so it is degraded at this moment. Even history and rollback also nothing is there. Next thing, delete. In case if we want to delete the cluster, we can delete it. Even we can apply this over here also. Okay, kubectl delete. If we do, this application get deleted. However, it won't delete the pods. Okay, so you should be careful. Next thing is refresh. In case if we do some changes, we can refresh it. Next, app health check. There are different health checks are available. Let me show you quickly. So these are the different health status available over there. One is healthy, progressing, degraded, missing, unknown, and suspend. Healthy nothing but everything is fine. Progressing nothing but it is applying changes. Degraded nothing but there is some issue with the manifest files while applying. Missing, some resources are missing, then it comes as a missing. Unknown nothing but even Argo CD doesn't know the status. Then suspended, we rarely see about the suspend. So these are the app health status. Now let's go back. And you can see here at this moment it is missing state. Okay. And sync status, out of sync. Out of sync nothing but your EKS cluster configuration, whatever is deployed and whatever is there in the Git repository, both are not yet in the sync. Now let's try to click on the sync and we'll see what happens. I know that it is going to fail, but let me try it out. So when you click on the sync, it asks you that synchronize. There are various options. So based on our requirement, we can choose it. But if it is automatic sync, we can use all these through our application file. As it is manual, it is going to ask what and all things you want to choose. But yeah, I will explain this later point of time. If you see, these are the two files which we are going to apply. Okay, just to let you know that this is the manifest file we applied. So we wanted to create this under this cluster in this namespace. Now let's see and synchronize it. You can see here sync failed. Sorry, I didn't discuss about this last sync. It wasn't there. So in the last sync, what happened? So last commit, you can see here added manifest files by AR Shankar. So this was executed. It was fine, but it is failed. It is failed. And if you want to see, you can see the logs over here. Okay, if I click on this one, you can see the logs. However, we'll come over here. So even you can see here out of sync. If I see the differences, still it is not implemented. Okay, still it is differ. And even you can see the sync status here where you can see the logs. So you can clearly see that failed. One or more objects failed to apply. Reason, namespace guestbook is not found. So the namespace of guestbook is not available. That's why it's failed. We need to create this guestbook namespace, then only it works properly. However, history or rollback, so far only one deployment we have done. I think it should show, and that too it is not successful. That's why it is not tracked. Nothing will work. And app status, currently it is missing. All right, even you can see here it is not applied. Now what I am going to do is I'm going to create kubectl create namespace guest book. Okay, so on this namespace we wanted to deploy. I have created this namespace. Now let's sync again. Okay, like this we can sync any number of times, but yeah, so synchronize these two files, and you can see now it is synced. Current sync is okay, and it is healthy status. Earlier it was in missing state, it is healthy. Even you can see here guest book, and these are the two manifest files applied, and you can see here this is replica set, then pod, because it is a deployment, right? So deployment, through deployment replica set has been created. From there pod has been created. This symbol indicates that it is healthy and it created few seconds ago. So this is how we can synchronize our application in the Argo CD. Now it is fine. And if I see the rollback and history, you can see this. This is the latest deployment which was successful. Now let's try something else. So we have already committed, and as part of the replica set, we are creating only one pod. So it's created. Now let's assume that two pods I wanted to create. Okay. So let me change the code to replicas as to save this file. All right. Now, sorry, I need to commit it, right? So git status git add dot git commit -n updated replicas as 2. Okay, so git push. So when we do changes, it will get committed, and our Argo CD constantly monitoring that repository, because that is how we define these details, right? It constantly monitor, and if there are any changes in the repository, then it will check and it will make the out of sync. This doesn't change. Last sync was successful. When it compare with the current cluster state with the repository, then it will be differ. Let's wait, because it go and checks by default for every 3 minutes. So we need to wait to see out of sync. Now you can see here it is out of sync. And if you want to see what are the differences, you can see here. So only it is comparing replicas, yes. So only whatever changes it is applying, that we can check it out with the comparative. All right, so now let me sync it again. So while syncing, you can see the option prune nothing but in case some manifest files you deleted in the repository. Let's assume that over here 10 microservices are there. You deleted one microservice manifest file. Okay. Then if you don't choose this option, it don't delete that resource. It keeps like that. So if you select this one, it is going to delete it. It is dry run. This is just apply only. This is forcefully apply. And sync options, anyway, we are going to use this with the automate. And you can see here, it is not going to change anything on the service, but it is going to change the deploy. Okay, synchronize it. Okay, now synced, everything is okay, and again it is healthy. And this time we need to see two parts. All right, this is how we can apply the changes. But this is a manual way of applying changes. What I wanted is automation way. That is where we need to update our manifest file, I mean to say application file, to make it automate way. So how I can make the changes as a automate way? That is where sync policy comes into the picture. So sync policy. So sync policy over here we need to mention it as a automated. Okay, automated. So now what happens whenever any changes happens? Okay, we just need to close it. From now onwards, if I make any changes, it automatically applies on the cluster. Okay, so let me apply this one, because this is Argo CD manifest file. Of course we need to apply it. Once we have created final file and we applied it, after that we don't need to do that one every time. That is the challenge with the kubectl command, right? So just we would like to avoid that. Anyway, until we made all the changes according to our necessity, till that time let's use the kubectl. So now we have enabled automated way. Okay, it has been updated. Even we can go and see those changes. Let me refresh it. And details, if I go, you can see here disable auto sync, which means that it is enabled. Okay, while enabling auto sync, there are two options which we can use: prune resource and self heal. So as I mentioned, prune nothing but in case if you delete some resource from here, it automatically deletes if I enable it. But so far I haven't enabled it. And self heal nothing but if we changed something on the Kubernetes cluster manually, so it automatically revert back to the configuration which is there in the GitHub. We are going to test these two as well. So for now we need to test autosync. For that I'm going back. What I do here is I go guest book. I'm trying to pull a image which really doesn't exist. I'm just given 3 threes at the end. So really this image doesn't exist, hopefully. Okay, let's commit this one and we'll see what happens or what Argo CD does do. Git status, git add dot. If I see git diff, okay, two files we modified. One is I just updated this one, and the second one is I enabled automate sync policy. Okay, git add dot git commit -m wrong image updated. Okay, so git push. I'm just committing these changes. Okay, I have updated my manifest files according to my requirement and I committed. Let's see what happened over here. As it is automatic, it is going to sync with our current manifest files, and our current manifest file is having faulty configuration, so it should fail. Okay, let's see. You can see here what happened. It is progressive. I think it is synced with the current configuration. You can see here wrong image updated. Even you can see over here it is few seconds ago, and over here it is trying to update this one. You can see here currently two parts are up and running. It is trying to create third part and it is broken. Nothing but it is not successful. And over here if you see the deployment, it is the previous replica set. This is the current replica set. So it is trying to create it. And if I see the error messages, you can see here it is trying to get this one, and you can clearly see failed to pull and unpack image, so and so. So back of pulling image, so it cannot able to pull the image. You can see here another state progressing, then it is going to be unhealthy or degraded state it goes. Okay, but it takes a lot of time to do that. Even you can go and check your pod status over here. Clear kubectl get node, sorry, namespaces, kubectl get pods -m guest book. Okay, you can clearly see image pullback error because we wantedly made it, but still our application will be up and running because it doesn't delete the running configuration until unless the new one is success. But I don't want to do this deployment. Okay, I want to roll back. That is where you can use this option because it is anyway faulty. I'm going to roll back to the previous one. From here itself I can do, or else the common way is I'm going back over here. I will update this again and I'm going to commit these changes so that I don't want to do any manual changes in the cluster directly. Okay, sorry, commit is not right. However, let me push the changes. So this time again it pulls the latest configuration, I mean to say latest manifest file, sync up with that, and then it is going back to the previous version itself. Nothing to do with the latest version. So let me refresh it. Yeah, you can see here. So it is go back to the previous configuration. So this current configuration is ignored now. So that is how we can roll back the changes and it came to healthy. All right. So far it is fine. Now let's add few more options to our application file. So far it is automated, right? As I mentioned, if I remove some manifest file from my repository, it should delete. In that case, I need to use a prune is true. Okay. I'm just adding this one. And again, let me apply it. Okay. So I have applied it. From now onwards, again, if I see this one, it should be updated. It is enabled now. All right, now what I will do, I will delete one of this file. Okay, instead of deployment, I'm going to delete the service file. So let's do that one. this is the service file, right? So let me delete it. Sorry. Move to recycle bin. Now let's make this commit git status git add dot git commit -m removed service file. Okay. Without prune option, if we delete this one, still it won't get effect. But now we have enabled it. Git push. It is going to delete that service. Let's go and see that. So service where it is created, here it is created. So after it has been synced, because it is automatic, we cannot able to see this. So let me refresh it. Yeah, you can see here now service has been deleted. If I don't enable that option, it won't delete that service. So that is the option which we have used. And I want to show you one last thing, that is self-heal true. So what do you mean by self-heal true? Okay, I don't commit it yet. First I will show you how it works. Let's assume that kubectl get pods -m guest book. Okay, over here we have 2 parts, right? I'm going to increase the parts to 3. Manually I'm going to change. For that we need to use a command called kubectl scale deployment. Our deployment is guestbook UI deployment minus replicas equal to 4. I'm giving 4 replicas -n guestbook namespace. Alright, so this is how we can update number of parts. This is manual way, directly on the cluster I'm doing. And if you see, you can see here 4 parts are there. Okay, it is up and running. However, our Argo CD cannot take any action. You just see, refresh. Yeah, you can see here out of sync. Out of sync, if I see the differences, this time you can see here the replications are 4, but configuration it is 2. So which means that cluster have 2 more replica sets extra, but it is not taking any action. If I wanted to take it action, that is where I need to update this parameter. Which parameter? Self-heal true. So let's save this one, and again let me apply this one. Apply -f. So I'm just applying it. So now self-heal is enabled. It will try to revert changes which are made in the cluster. You can see here it came back, and if I go and check the pods, it came back to 2. Why? Because it is self-heal. Let me try to run it once again, and you can clearly see. Again, I am trying to scale it up to 4, and it goes to out of sync, and it will come to sync, I hope. Okay, no, it is not going. It scaled up and scaled down, and you can see here. Okay, 2 are there. Let me try it once again. 4 were there, and sorry, 4 are there. Yeah, 4 are there. Again, I'm going to run it. It should delete those. Okay, that is how self-heal works. Apart from this, we have one more option. I just want to mention that sync options. Okay, sync options. So in the sync options, usually if you do remember, we have created namespace manually, right? Instead of creating namespace manually, we can mention it over here. Create namespace true. If I mention this parameter under sync options, okay, in the sync policy, we no need to create this namespace manually. It automatically creates it. So let me save this file and let me apply it again. So this is final time which I am applying kubectl. From now onwards, I don't need to do anything. Okay. Just I want to introduce each change one by one. That's why I made these many times. However, we can do this configuration at once and we can apply it. From that onwards, we don't need to execute kubectl apply command for this application. It will be up and running. Okay. Now, as a last test, what I'm going to do, First thing, I'm going to delete the existing configuration. Clear the screen. kubectl delete -f application.yml. kubectl get ns. So namespace should be there. kubectl get pod -n guestbook. Okay, you can see here, though our application is deleted, let me refresh the applications. So there is no application, but still the pods are up and running. So though we delete our application, it doesn't delete the pods. So I'm going to delete it. kubectl delete namespace guestbook. Alright, it has been deleted. Now let's apply this manifest file one last time so that it should create namespace. It should enable automatic sync as well. And in case if we delete something from our repository, it should delete that from the cluster. And in case something we modified manually on the cluster, it should revert back. That's what it is going to do. However, we don't need to test all those. Anyway, we have tested. So kubectl, I'm going to apply. Okay, this time it automatically create all the required stuff. Okay, there is a typo over here. I just corrected it. Let me apply it. kubectl apply -f application.yml. So this is the last time we are applying. From now onwards, we don't need to modify this application.yml file, because if any changes we required for our application or microservices, we are going to modify only our manifest files, right? So let's go and see over here now. Sorry, over here. Yeah, it has been synced and fine, and I can go and check kubectl get namespace. Okay, guestbook has been created. kubectl get pods -n guestbook. Alright, it is up and running. So this is how we can configure. From now onwards, I don't need to do anything. Maybe what I can do, I deleted service file, right? I'm going to add that to my application. So go back to repository. Over here, yeah, this service file is there. Might be deleted, yeah. So I can go to history. I retrieve from the history. So I will go to this commit, browse files from this commit. Over here we have this file, copy it and let me recreate it. Guestbook UI service.yml. Save this file. So yeah, git status, git add dot, git commit -n added service file. So like this, I will just update manifest files, git push. Whatever changes I wanted to do, I just change it and update into the repository. From there, Argo CD is going to take care of the rest of the activity. So now Argo CD task to create the service. At this moment, there is no service, right? It should create the service after syncing with the latest commit. So it was successful 2 minutes ago, but we have done latest commit just now, right? That latest commit should be synced over here. Okay, service has been created, is not allowed to access. That's okay, but you can see here it has been updated few seconds ago and service has been created. This is how we can manage our microservices by using Argo CD. However, this is only one application, but in my Udemy course, I am going to create multiple applications. And also we are going to include this in the CI/CD pipeline to use deployments through Argo CD. I mean to say Argo CD as a deployment tool. And also this is directly applying manifest files, right? But in the real world, mostly we use Helm charts. Over there, we are going to discuss, and also adding additional clusters, how we can add. And if we have multiple environments, how do we manage? All these topics are covered in my Udemy course. If you are interested, please check out after a couple of weeks. Thank you so much. And one last thing, I would like to show you how to delete the cluster. So if you do remember, we have copied this cluster.yml to Argo CD, Argo demo, right? So EKSCTL, not kubectl here, EKSCTL delete cluster -f cluster.yml. And in case if it is not deleting with this command, so add this one, because I could see some issue with just deleting if we have a single node. So just add this disable node group evacuation so that it get deleted. All right. So that's how we can delete our cluster once it is done. Hopefully this video is helpful. If you like this video, please give you a thumbs up. And if you have any questions, please comment below. I will try to answer my level best whenever I get some time. Thank you so much and see you in another interesting video.